Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Dallas, thank you so much and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
You bet. So let's talk about this redistricting battle here in Texas that has certainly reverberated across the country. How do you see this shaking out?
I think that you're going to see Texas ram it through because that's what Texas does, with no input whatsoever from the members. And when I say the members, I mean even the Republican members. This map was not created by the Republicans in the House. And so this is a map that was sent down from up in D.C. somewhere. And so I think that that map is going to pass. I think that they are overplaying their hand. I don't think that they're actually going to win 5 seats. I think that a number of our incumbents are able to win their seats back. One of the things that they tried to do was in the Southern Valley, they tried to write off Vicente, they tried to write off Cuellar, and they did ultimately end up getting one of those 3 seats that they had been shooting for. But the reality is that Henry Cuellar, he ended up winning that seat for re-election. Trump won that seat by 7 points. So like, he is a unique and capable candidate when it comes to that area. Someone who was elected on the state level, someone who's been elected over and over on the federal level. And so they're trying their best to kick him out while also making sure that they minimize the voices of Latinos. They've decided to pack more Latinos into those districts and make them more than they need to be so that they could hopefully have influence somewhere else. They are really banking on Latinos really loving on Trump this go round. I don't know that we'll be able to save anything in the DFW area. I think that Van Dyne may end up being more vulnerable. She came from a vulnerable spot before the 2021 redistricting. I think with the right candidate, we may be able to take her out. She is not as loud as Marjorie Taylor Greene, but her politics are just as bad, if not worse. So I think that with the right candidate, we may be able to make that race competitive. And then down south in the Harris County area, it gets really murky. But either way, these lines are unconstitutional. We know that Texas has been found to be intentionally racially discriminatory every single time they've gone through redistricting. We were currently in litigation on the 2021 lines, and these have to be some of the most obviously racially gerrymandered and terrible lines that I've ever seen in the state of Texas, and that is saying a lot.
So you said a lot, so I definitely want to ask you about everything that you mentioned. First, let me go back because when since you're making some predictions about congressional seats, what do you think is going to happen with Congresswoman Julie Johnson? Because she's got a decision to make. Does she run in 32 under the new map if it's approved, which would become a Republican majority district, or does she have to challenge Congressman Vesey, whose district would move solely in Dallas County?
Yeah, I think that we will hopefully work it out about who runs where. Obviously, both of them are now in Republican districts. No one currently resides in 30, and then I reside in 33. So I think it is a matter of kind of us talking about what's what, while also recognizing that because there is new territory, there also may be new contenders to come in. So, for me, I'm going to get to polling because I feel confident I can win wherever I run. I do, but ultimately, I'm trying to get a pulse on the district, right? So I ended up with 200,000 additional people into 30. They are all coming from Tarrant County. I know nothing about those 200,000 people. Whereas where I live, obviously about 200,000 of us are still where I currently live, along with a lot of the old 100 as well as a lot of the old 30, going all the way to that eastern portion, getting that Pleasant Grove, some of that got thrown into 32. So, it's about kind of, does Mark Vesey fit better into 30 now because it does have some Tarrant or not? And does Julie just kind of fit better at running in 33 than me? And is my district going to be okay with me running and being on this fixed government income and therefore not buying a home in the newly constructed 30? Obviously, I don't have to live there under federal rules.
Right.
But, some people want somebody that lives in the district, but obviously the vast majority of this district I have represented without actually living in the portions that they've left in 30.
So if I hear you correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, you're actually debating about whether to run in a different district than 30?
I'm debating about whether or not I would run where they put me, which is where I live. Yeah.
In 33?
In 33.
And was that, what about the idea of just moving back into 30?
Again, on this fixed income that I am paid in Congress, the idea of actually buying a new home or getting it, we don't get enough money. I mean, I'm being honest, and I know that some people may take issue with that because they talk about how much money we make, and I get it. It's not that we're obviously getting minimum wage, but by the time you talk about having I have a mortgage, and I have an interest rate that is like 3%. Mm-hmm. Interest rates are not that low anymore, right? That's number one. Number two, so it's a matter of, oh, do you sell your home, then go somewhere else and get a higher interest rate? Like, there's all these variables, and as a single woman who has one income, who's not allowed to make outside income, there's a lot to be had there. I think I have a strong enough rapport with what is left in 30 that they trust me to be a strong advocate for these areas that I've already represented. I know nothing about this new 200,000. And so we are absolutely, I'm a data-driven girl. So we're going to run the numbers. And then obviously I want to talk to my colleagues and say what kind of makes sense so that at least hopefully two of us have the best shot at going back.
I would imagine that's going to be a difficult conversation.
I imagine so too, but I think, you know, this entire time I will say the three of us have been very, very good and very cordial. Like we're not the problem. We know where the problem lies. And so there may be, you know, a number of options, but I think we need to explore all the options to make sure that hopefully we're returning those experienced members to Congress and minimizing the risk of, you know, for all I know, in this new 200,000 crop, there's 5 or 6 people that are thinking, you know, this is what I want to run in. Now, whether or not they'd be effective at getting at the other 500,000 is a whole other question. But there's a lot of questions to be answered, especially if people feel like their representative needs to live in the district. That is something that I know we're kind of used to doing, especially when you talk about the state house and the state senate. So, you know, I want to be honest, open, and transparent with my constituents. Like, if I'm running in 30, I don't live there, and they don't pay me enough to go and buy another home. So I'm not going to move into the district. Obviously, I'm engaged in litigation, have been engaged in litigation since 2021, and my goal would be to reconnect the district because they did remove all the economic engines out of my district, which is one of those red flags when we're looking at whether or not there's been a violation of the Voting Rights Act. And so, you know, I live basically very close to Dallas Love Field, one of those economic engines, which is one reason I felt like, oh, you know, all will be well. Besides the fact that they asked me for my address and confirmed the census block that I lived in, and they completely ignored these certifications. Usually when we draw our own maps, like when we draw them for the State House, State Senate, there always is a notation of where we live. And so, like, that, where you live usually stays in. It is a very rare occasion for where you live to be thrown out.
And so you're saying this was intentionally done?
It was absolutely intentional.
But to your point before, that the U.S. Constitution, if my memory serves correctly, you as members of Congress just have to be in the state in which you serve on election day. Yep.
Yeah, you just have to be a resident of the state.
Right.
That is
on
correct.
Election day.
Correct.
And so I guess as part of your decision-making process, having that conversation with your current constituents, if they would mind you being out of the district.
Correct.
Okay. You also talked about Latino districts.
Yeah.
And I know this was part of the 2021 lawsuit, if I'm not mistaken, on the maps.
Not on my part.
Not on your part,
correct.
Right, but
yes.
in the other districts.
Yes.
And so Republicans have said this time around, look, we're creating 4 Latino majority districts. One of them would be the new 33, which you are considering. Your thoughts?
They're playing games, right? They also said that they created 2 new African American seats.
One of them would be 30.
Correct. They're claiming that there were none. That is not the position that they have held in court. So the benefit of being a litigant in the current litigation is that, number one, they have acknowledged that these seats are already protected. So any lack of protection has been because they've tried to make something unprotected. For instance, in Congressional District 30, the citizen voting age population of African Americans prior to the 2021 redistricting was over 50%. When you're typically creating a new single majority minority district, they are looking to see if you can concisely put together a district that is 50% or better to have the best protection that a district can have, all right? So when my district was initially created, that's where it was. They're the ones that took it down below 50 because it still naturally was populating that way. They took it down below 50% because they decided that they wanted to crack minorities in Tarrant County, which is how 30 ended up going into Tarrant County in the first place. 30 was wholly contained in Dallas County, but they wanted to make sure that some of those minorities that were growing too fast, specifically in the Grand Prairie, Mansfield area, they decided why not break them up. They broke them up into 3s. They took 1/3, put them into my district, 1/3 put them into Jake Elsie's district, and 1/3 they put into, I believe, Burgess district at the time. And so with that, they diluted their voices. When you look at my district now, they now have decided, even though it still enjoyed the protection, because it's about whether or not African Americans will still have the opportunity to choose their representation. My district still functioned that way, where the African American electorate was still able to choose their representation. So you can fall below 50 if you've already enjoyed the protection. And that's where we were, and that's why they weren't stressed about it, because they knew it would still be protected. And that was the state's position in this litigation for the last 4 years.
In 2021. Yeah.
In 2021. Right. Now, as it relates to Mark Vesey's district, it was considered more of a coalition district. But to be perfectly honest, I always looked at it as a Latino opportunity district anyway, because the numbers were so high. In fact, if you go back to when that district was created, Domingo Garcia was running in that race. And every time it is that Mark Vesey is challenged, he is challenged by a Latino. It's not like when you look at my primary, where it's basically all African Americans that are running. It is typically Latinos that come after Mark Vesey. And so it has been an opportunity district. Now, whether or not Latinos are actually outvoting their counterparts is a question, and whether or not Latinos are just deciding that Mark Vesey is the one. We know that the same can be said for 35, where Lloyd Doggett used to represent, going from Austin to San Antonio. Right. Lloyd Doggett is Caucasian, but it was always a Latino opportunity district, and they kept electing Lloyd Doggett. So it's not about who gets elected, it's about who gets to choose who is elected. And that doesn't necessarily always comport with that minority that gets to do the selecting.
Now, in the 33rd district, Vesey's new district, under this map, or maybe yours, we'll see.
It's more Latino.
Right. It's heavy Latino, because I went back and I looked at the numbers.
They took a lot of Oak Cliff and Pleasant Grove.
Voting age, almost 292,000 Latinos, 91,000 blacks, 37,000 Asians, 150, almost 6,000 whites in that district. So let me go back and just ask you, because there's obviously been a lot of back and forth between Republicans and Democrats of who gerrymanders more.
Yeah.
And so the Republicans have said, we're just catching up to the other states, to California, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, wherever. And when I talked with Republican State Representative Katrina Pearson, when I asked her about this, she said Democrats have to get comfortable with the fact that minorities are trending more in Republicans' favor. We saw that in 2024. You know, of the 16 counties along the border, 13 of them went and voted for Trump. So what do you say to that?
I mean, I don't, you know, people choose their politics based on whatever reasons they choose them, right? I'm a Democrat because I don't believe in a white supremacy agenda, and I believe that the Republicans, for the most part, are pushing a white supremacy agenda when you are doing anti-civil rights movements when you were rolling back protections that we've always had around, number one, minorities accessing the ballot box. So here's the deal. If it is that minorities, whether they're Black, Asian, or Hispanic, if they are going for Republicans, then why is it that you continue to try to dilute their voices and don't want them to be heard? Why is it that when we look at those that have been allowed to elect their representation under this new map, you specifically are taking out Mark Vesey, who's been elected by, we won't even say which minority, but we know it wasn't white people. I'm gonna just say that. When you look at Al Green, who this new map takes out, we won't even say who elected him, but it wasn't white people. So the reality is that it is about who gets to do the electing, but it is curious to me that we've got 4 Black elected folk on the federal level in this state, yet somehow specifically at least 2 of them were targeted to be kicked out, like in some way. And then we know that the 18th, they decided not to necessarily mess with it, which was a surprise. I mean, they obviously messed with it. Let me not say it that way. They decided that they would still afford it the protection that they said it was due in the current litigation. But they also said that Congressional District 9, Al Green's seat was protected in this current litigation. So my deal is this, like I've explained to the representative, that this isn't about who votes for who. It is about making sure in the state that has more African Americans than any other state, that they are not left with their voices only amounting to 1/5 the strength of their Caucasian counterparts. It is about a state in which 39% of the state is Anglo, and the highest ethnic group is actually Latinos, that Anglos not go from getting 2 additional seats on the backs of people of color when the state grew in the census by 95% to now 4 new Anglo seats. So they don't want to talk about the fact that they continue to take Anglo representation up when in the last decade we only added 180,000 Anglos. Each congressional district is 766,000 people. So you tell me how that math works. You decided that you wanted the seats because people moved to this state and the people were overwhelmingly of color, yet you continue to take their representation and their voices away. Now, if you believe that they're going to vote for Republicans, fine, but give them their seats is all I'm asking as it relates to the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act.
So this goes back, to this letter that the Justice Department sent to Governor Abbott and the Attorney General, as you know, and it talks about coalition districts. And the government is, the Justice Department is quoting this, the Fifth Circuit.
Correct.
In which the Fifth Circuit appeals court, says the state was wrong, we were wrong, years ago, as far as these coalition districts. They quoted the Supreme Court, one of the justices, Kavanaugh, I believe, that said, these coalition districts or whatever, race can't be used, but they only are good for so long. We have seen huge growth here in the state of Texas. And so I'm wondering, do you think that this is going to end up back at the Supreme Court for them to have to make another decision about this? Because I don't know about, the other states aren't growing like Texas. Texas is growing. And so what do you say about all that?
So I absolutely believe that they're trying to get it to the Supreme Court. They are trying to hopefully create new precedents. They are consistently trying to go to the Supreme Court and have them decimate what is left of the Voting Rights Act. It is why the Alabama case is headed back, or is it Louisiana? One of the two. It's headed back to the Supreme Court now. And we know that this same makeup of the Supreme Court is the one that said, hey, Louisiana, 30% of your state is black folk, and you only have an opportunity for 1 seat to be elected by black folk. You need another one. Same thing they said for Alabama. So what did they do? This Supreme Court said under the Voting Rights Act, you've got to have 2 seats. Now, these are different seats than a coalition seat. But the thing is, they keep misinterpreting the Fifth Circuit Court opinion by saying that it is saying that they are illegal. It wasn't about disbanding these coalition seats. It was about whether or not the creation of them enjoys the same protections as the creation used to. That is what it was about. So what they've decided to do is disband them and hope that the court agree that, yes, you can disband them, because the Fifth Circuit never said that. The Fifth Circuit said, we won't necessarily recognize the creation of new ones.
So 2 more questions. I appreciate your time as always. You were in the Texas House back in 2021, the last time there was a quorum break.
Yeah.
And this time around, we have seen Republicans react more aggressively to try to enforce the quorum. We've seen daily fines now, $500. We've seen DPS going around and searching for any Democrats in Texas, putting out a tip line now for any sightings, saying that all those investigative costs are going to be incurred by the Democrats who left the state. We've seen this lawsuit by Governor Abbott and the Attorney General against 13 Democrats, plus the lawsuit about fundraising against former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. What do you make of all this?
I think that it all comes from the top. These people are lawless. It is amazing how you can spend these types of resources going after duly elected people who have decided that their oath meant that they would look to the Constitution.
But is it lawless when it's in the Texas Constitution that they can pretty much enforce quorum breaking, or enforce a quorum?
They can enforce a quorum, but also in the Constitution it says that you can break quorum. That is my whole point.
It's enabled.
Right. I mean, it's the fact that it's mentioned in the Constitution obviously says that this is a tool that you can use. This isn't something that they made up out of thin air. This is what the Constitution says. And so you have people, and this isn't the first quorum break, it's not the second quorum break, it's not the third quorum break. So we know that these Texans have decided that this is what they need to do to make sure that they are representing for their districts. But when you look at this administration, and I'm talking about on the federal level, consistently puts more energy into going after political opponents than, say, going after people that are harming us. That is why it is so rich that they want to talk about, oh, let's go and hunt them down and let's expend all these energies on going after duly elected members of the House. But we didn't see this energy when it came down to the Epstein files. Somehow no one was in an uproar when they decided to run away from Congress early so that they could avoid voting on the release of the Epstein files that are with the FBI. So while the FBI is supposedly wasting resources going and looking for duly elected members of the Texas House, they probably could be doing what the American people asked them to do, which was to focus on the Epstein files. I promise you, if I ran a poll right now and I asked the American people, which one are you more interested in seeing, the Epstein files or somehow these Texans getting back to Texas, when guess what? Texans didn't ask to be redistricted. The rest of the country didn't ask that Texas be redistricted. The president didn't run on redistricting Texas. The president is rogue and out of control, and he knows that if things keep going the way that they're going, where Republicans can't even show up and see their own constituents because their constituents are running them out of the auditoriums because of these failed, terrible policies that are about to hit hard, he doesn't want accountability. Well, in America, where we believe in democracy, that is what elections are for. They are for accountability. I expect if I don't do right by my district, that they would vote me out. And guess what? Since they are not doing right by this country and their constituents, because these hits that we're about to experience, they're not just going to be rural hits. They're not just going to be urban hits. They're not just going to be Democratic, Republican, or Independent. It's going to hit all of us so long as you are not a top 1%er. Your healthcare premiums, if you are able to have healthcare, it's going up. The cost of your food, if you are able to afford it in general, the cost is going up. Our farmers, they are at more risk than they were before because of these failed trade policies, as well as so many other things. The cost of education, because they want to get rid of the Department of Education and reduce the amount of funding that students are able to get. Listen, I am telling you that we are in a hair on fire situation, and because he lost so badly in 2018, because he was such a terrible president for the first 2 years, and ultimately, in my opinion, the entire 4 years, he doesn't want to endure the backlash. He doesn't want us to open the investigations to find out about his $400 million plane. He doesn't want us to find out what's going on with Maxwell and why somehow she has been given work release and relocated to this minimum security facility in Texas. He doesn't want us to answer the questions about his crypto and the schemes where he is enriching himself with businesses. He doesn't want that. But I got news for him. I don't believe that people are going to be so caught up on partisanship when it comes to the midterm. I think that there will be a lot of people that will show up, even Republicans, that at least want a check on him.
Last question. U.S. Senate race. There
Yep.
are rumblings that I'm hearing that, you know, maybe you would. Are you considering a run for U.S. Senate here? We saw a poll, yes, it was by the Senate Republicans, that you were ahead in that one poll, 35% over Colin Allred and former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. Is this something you're considering?
For me, I got to focus on saving this district. So that is my focus.
So that's a definite no?
I am focused on saving the district.
And so no plans to run for U.S. Senate?
Not at this moment.
Okay. Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman from Dallas. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.